Hey, good coffee morning, neighbors. Let's talk about human history and how goofy it gets, and how goofy people let the conversation get. So, a good friend went down and saw the Nazca lines, the huge glyphs put out at the tops of mountains, pictures to the sky. So he had photos. He went there and he touched it. Very impressed. It is an amazing work of art in the high, what's that, the Andes Mountains? And hasn't been replicated anywhere else that we know of on the planet, but it could have been destroyed elsewhere. So that civilization that lived on the side of mountains, on the tops of mountains, thrived for generations. How many generations would that be? So amazing culture. They terraced the sides of mountains to feed the populations. And going back to those glyphs up on the tops of mountains that look like they're monuments to something. Well, they are. The people at the time, they had no wheels. Think about that little detail to move things around, and how much the wheel or rolling the log, meant to building civilizations back in the day. So when I see those glyphs, I think of the amazement that the people must have had over things like birds and animals and life in general. It's the same amazement we have, only we have cell phones and YouTube now. But these people sat out. First, they created a calendar with a totally different time scale than any calendars that were developed in any other place. It is the most sophisticated calendar, celestial calendar, that we know of, but it just doesn't recognize it. It's an epic, if you want to use a term that people want to own. So the culture, the civilization built down there was built almost the same time as the Middle East was building itself. Almost the same time that India, that Africa, that Asia, China were building civilizations, discrete, smaller cultures that in their time were huge. They went from foraging to gardening to animal husbandry, just like the other civilizations did, with a different set of animals. There were no horses in South America. They have guinea pigs as food, which we have as pets now, but they didn't lose that in their culture. So looking back at the age and just the grandeur of those times. Now, what happened, what came along, was climate change, where the weather around you changes. And all of a sudden, the crops aren't as hardy. And next year, the crops are less so. And you see this over time, and your town is starving. So you reach out for other natural resources and you destroy the town and the village next to you so that you can have their land, so that you can feed your cities and your suburbias and your pot. You see how this goes, right? So this is South American history. Now, what we hear about is alien bullshit, is supernatural nonsense. The true history of South America, its cultures, its attempts at civilization, its massive ruins. You have to go visit one of these ruins to appreciate it. You have to go visit and realize how the Catholic Church puts its monuments on top of their monuments and rewrites history and encourages phantasmagorical, that's a cool word, phantasmagorical stories about South America or any of the ancient cultures that came up and grew at the same time, and we know about it. This shallow Middle Eastern historical pointer that keeps being injected is so false a presentation of history. So you get ancient aliens, because inside of that shit you can stick. You get giants. You get supernatural stories of magical rock lifting. And in the meantime, the true deep cultural history of North and South America is ignored, is denied, is made a joke of. The Indian tribe, I'm sorry, excuse me, the Native American tribes, North and South American, that were overrun with this stuff. Their culture was subverted. Their schools were taken. Their education, well, they didn't have. See, this is still the challenge. They still don't have a good education system. They will be left where they are by the media, by our media. It's not a good. It's not a good sitcom. So when people talk bullshit about our South American historical relatives, the indigenous peoples of nations and continents, it's hubris. It's very poor historical teaching. It is not healthy in the long run. It divides us, which is a useful tool. So there's the coffee morning. There's some of my thoughts, my understanding of the history of our planet and how old we are and why the pieces are important. So stare at the stars.